maybe I'll start with a very quick introduction overview about this new MRes. Actually, we've had it running for 2 years now. So it's really designed to try to bridge the interface between computational approaches and biological questions. And so, as you know now, there are lots of problems in biology, from molecular protein structure to ecosystems, and they all need essentially computational approaches to either simulate them, to model them, or to do big data analysis. And this course is really designed to give you hands-on expertise in a lab to actually combine computational approaches with biological questions. So you will be taught different skills, mainly computational coding skills, data analysis skills, how to use AI and data analysis, but also you will have a 9 months research project where you will be embedded in cutting edge research labs at UCL, often between two supervisors. So one is more computational and one will be more biology. And together you'll see how they work together and interface of research to really push some of the cutting edge questions. So the philosophy of the course is really try to, help you think like an interdisciplinary scientist and also provide you with skills that will hopefully prepare you for whatever area of work you decide to go into after the MRes. It could be academic research, it could be industry, it could be, other non-scientific jobs. But I think every job now really requires computational approaches, skills in AI, data analysis, and just problem solving, logical thinking. And this is really the soft skills as well as the, biological skills that we will teach you. All right. So do we have any kind of questions?
If you would rather not speak, you could put your questions in the chat. So just to reinforce what Yang Lan said, so you would be our third intake of students on this MRes. So it's a relatively new course, but that's because it's a relatively new sort of requirement in research science. So learning these skills, if you're thinking about doing a PhD or staying in research, learning these skills, I think, is really essential for science, for the future going forward in science, and to really make the most of a true interdisciplinary approach to answer questions that currently are not tenable, that we can't answer in biology, using computational and AI approaches, as Yang Lan said. So you would be our third intake. Our first intake is just about to graduate. They've all done exceptionally well, and I think they all got a lot out of the program. They learned, for some of them who came with relatively weak computational skills, it's been a really strong learning curve, and they've left a lot more confident and knowing a lot more about how to apply these dry lab skills, if you like, to wet lab situations. Similarly, people who come to us from more of a computational background have gained an understanding of biology and the sort of questions that their skills could be applied to in a more translational environment. Maybe they've come from a sort of pure physics or chemistry background, and learning the biology has enabled them to think about going into many different career possibilities, including the healthcare system and even sort of medical devices and things like this. So it will open the doors to lots of different careers. And more than that, will enable you, whatever you do, it will enable you to talk to different types of people. In whatever job we have, there's going to be specialists in different aspects of that job. And what's important and will make you successful is being able to understand what different people do, how they do it, and be able to interact and critique their work. So this, I think, so working as a team, an interdisciplinary team, is not just for research, it's for life. And that is the way society is moving. And it's a very positive direction.
Oh, there's another person joining.
Yeah. So Maybe we could talk a little bit about, does anybody have any questions so far about the course?
Hi, Chantal. Can you hear me? Sorry, you've just joined. We've already gone through a little bit of intro, but I'm happy to cover some essentials again. Hello, Chantal. Can you hear me?
Yes, she can. She's in the chat.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Chantal, just to let you know, we are recording the session so that it can be used for information for other students.
great. Yeah, so maybe for the benefits of others, I can explain a little bit about our teaching approaches. So, Chantal, just for your benefit, I'll quickly give you an overview again. So the philosophy of the course is really to teach computational approaches to biologists and apply them to biology. But also, the course is also tailored for people from more computational backgrounds to learn biology. So it's very much an interface of the two fields because the time is very much ripe now to, apply these interdisciplinary approaches to a scientific problem. And biology is just an example. And so you will learn a lot of soft skills that will be useful for all areas of research and other jobs in society. And the teaching approach, at least in one of the modules, which is a core module that I run, which you will do in your first term before you do your 9 months research project. And so this is really, again, designed to be very interactive. So we will no longer have traditional big lectures where the students just sit passively and listen. This course is very much designed for you to, of course, do a little bit of learning, but then it's really for you to go and tackle a problem and then to present your findings to your peers. And your peers, the other students in the group, will be asking you questions, giving you critical feedback. And we want to promote this kind of so-called peer-to-peer learning, which is really how you will be learning after university, right? In the rest of your future, whatever jobs you go to, you will be very likely working as groups, learning from each other. And so this will help you with communication skills. You will have to stand up every week to present to the group. Initially, it's a bit daunting, but you'll be amazed how, quickly people improve. We've had 2 years of this course now, and the students really actually all tell us this is the module they enjoy the most because after that initial fear barrier of presenting, they actually realize it's not so scary to speak up and they very much enjoy the discussions they have with their colleagues. And so this type of learning we find is has been very effective, and we'd like to, encourage that because I think that's how society works in the future. But of course, during that time, you will be discussing, different technical tools, whether it's computational or other theoretical approaches, mathematical approaches, but also each week it will be applied to a certain biological problem. So you do have some context in which to apply it to. But as Julie said earlier, it's not, limited to just biology. It's just an example of how you solve a problem. And so every week there will be a problem that's posed, and then you have to try to solve it with mostly computational approaches, but also others if you feel the need to do that. Um, all right. Any questions regarding that? And then maybe we can talk a bit more about the 9 months research projects, which is really the bulk of the MRes. Oh, right. Yes, that's a good question. So as we said, we try to tailor for a broad spectrum of students. Some will have very advanced coding knowledge and some very basic coding knowledge. And the aim of the course is to teach you what you don't know, right? That's our general philosophy, whether it's lack of biology background or lack of computational background. But importantly, we do have a crash course at the beginning, um, 1 week, I believe, maybe two if needed, that we will give you basic Python training. So we do pretty much all of our coding in Python now, which is the preferred language for many sectors of jobs and for teaching now. And so, yes, you will have a crash course, but we do also encourage you, like, to over the summer holidays, perhaps to do some basic online learning yourself. But yes, we can teach you what you don't know. What are other? Great, thank you. So Louise is asking, what are other modules in this course? Right, so maybe Julie, you can
Yeah,
cover that.
sure. So, as you probably know from reading about the MRes online, the major module is the research lab project. So this starts in January and goes on until September. So it's a 9-month research project, and Yanglan will address the sort of projects that you'll be doing. But that accounts for 120 credits of the 180 credits you need to complete during your MRes stay with us. Okay, so that's 120 credits. Then the module that Yanglan has been describing, which is the bespoke module for this MRes course and is called Computational Cell Biophysics, that module counts for another 15 credits. In addition to those core modules, there's one other core module that is more of a skills module. It covers cutting edge research techniques. So it's a series of workshops that cover sort of really cutting edge imaging techniques, or techniques in EM, or techniques in RNA sequencing. So it covers cutting edge techniques in a sort of tutorial workshop session. And then it's assessed all by coursework. Either you write a review about one of those techniques. That's part of the coursework assessment. And the other assessment is you write a news and views article on a seminar that you've attended. So that could be a seminar anywhere throughout UCL. So it's sort of encouraging students to interface with current research, both by attending seminars from external speakers. So every research department has a seminar series. So we encourage you to go to all of those seminars and then choose one to write a news and views article. And then this focus on cutting edge research techniques, where you're given workshops and tutorials in these techniques, and then you pick one and assess its historical value, but also its future potential in science. So that's the other core module. So that leaves you with 30 credits worth of optional modules that, on the information on the prospectus, we've listed mostly cell biology modules. But the students that have come in and completed the MRes, or are starting the MRes now this year, have gone outside of that list as well. So some of them have taken computational modules, some have taken modules in neuroscience because they think they might want to use their programming in the future in a neuroscience setting. So that short list of cell biology modules can be expanded on an individual basis to cover areas that you're specifically interested in or want to explore. I can't guarantee that you will get on absolutely every module you want to, because obviously there is high demand, and you need to have some necessary background in that area. You can't decide from zero neuroscience to go to a third year BSc neuroscience module and understand it. But we could help you with that and guide you into, help you with your choice of modules into those that you would be most interested in doing, but also would be within your scope and would be helpful, that you could do well on. Does that answer your question? Okay, so then that's it. That's your 180 credits. And as Ian has said, you can find more about the modules on the course page. But the modules focused there, as I said before, are more or less exclusively cell biology modules, and we have given the students some flexibility in what they choose.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, again, the main philosophy, which also applies to the projects, which I will talk about later, is that if you have very strong ideas about what you would like to do, and for whatever reason it isn't available, come and talk to us at the beginning of the year, and we will try our best to help you shape the masters into your bespoke masters that suits your needs and suits your demands. It's very much tailored for students, and we want you to leave feeling like you've got the most out of it, and you've really learned what you came to learn in your 12 months, right? And it is a 12 months master's, so you do get the full full academic, well, full 12 months a year, not just the academics of September to June year. So it's a good amount of time to really dig into area of research and the area of topic. And so we sort of model it almost like a mini PhD, I call it, so you really get to feel like what it is like to do a PhD, but obviously in a year's time rather than the typical 3 years time. And it's a very good platform. So many of our students leave, wanting to do PhDs and so on. But of course, there are many other very good options out there. All right. Any
So
other
young
questions? Yeah.
yeah, sorry, young man. So
Yeah.
yeah, any questions? Feel free, write them in the text or open your microphones and talk to us directly. Maybe Angela, you could cover sort of the type of projects,
Yes,
the
exactly.
projects on offer.
So again, these are just some examples and just to show you the breadth and depth of what we have available. So, we're very lucky that we're at UCL where we have some of the top researchers in, their respective fields. And so, for example, we have projects that are covering ecology. So you could be modeling antimicrobial resistance. That's one. Another type is we have projects in neuroscience. So, for example, modeling sort of data from brain imaging, functional imaging. We also have projects that's looking at development, so modeling tissue growth and disease and cancer or tissue regeneration, tissue repair. We also have projects that's more at the molecular level. So, for example, looking at protein structure or yeah, intracellular molecular structure. And their computational inputs can come from different aspects. Some can be data analysis, where you need a lot of computational tools, for example, to understand spatial transcriptomic data and to link to data from the different modes of omics. So what's called multimodal analysis now, using AI to link them together. There are some that's using AI to help with image analysis. So for example, EM data, electron microscopy data, or fluorescence microscopy data, all of that needs to be quantified now. So it links with the core modules, right? For example, the module of practical skills, you get the images from the microscope. Then what do you do with them? How do you analyze them? You can't just have a pretty picture on the screen anymore nowadays. You really need to extract the data from that. How big are the cells? Are the cells moving? Are they changing shape? When there is, for example, a disease onset, what is the first hallmark? What is the first trigger? So this will again help with healthcare diagnostics. But there are also some more advanced models, depending on again everyone's kind of interest and skills. That's really building AI models or predictive models or mechanical models, looking at, yeah, again, protein folding, cell shape changes, cell migration. So, there's really a lot of topics I can go on for forever. Um, but again, the emphasis is all projects that we ask to be submitted to our pool, they have to have two supervisors. So one, more computational and one more biological. And so you will, by definition, always be at the interface. But again, of course, depending on your skills and your interests and what you would like to learn, you could be at different ends of the spectrum. So some people have gone for 100% computational. Some students actually wanted to go into the lab and collect some of their own data and then analyze it rather than just take someone else's data and churn numbers out of it. And some actually realized, oh, they actually really enjoy doing experiments and working on microscopes and so on. And so I think again that's very flexible. And so we do provide almost 3 months time at the beginning of the year for you to meet all the potential supervisors who are proposing projects. And we encourage you to take the time to talk to every project supervisor, even attend their group meetings just to see, what their lab atmosphere is like. That's very important, right? You have to like who you're working with. And so you do have a lot of time at the beginning to decide and before you sort of commit in January. And as Julie said, of course we have a list, but if you have a project, let's say someone really famous at UCL you want to work with, and they haven't submitted to our pool of projects, and we've had students do this, you can go and talk to them. As long as they're willing to host you, we will be very happy for you to do a project with them, provided it fits obviously our philosophy, and I'm sure most of the time it does if you're interested in, in their project. So again, our list is not exclusive, it's really just an example list, and you're very welcome also if you want to choose from the, I mean, basically thousands of researchers that you see out that you have at your disposal in a way. But of course, we need to ask them. You need to approach them ideally yourself, show your interest early on. And most of the time, it has worked out for us in the last 2 years that we've had students asking for bespoke projects.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just mention the practical side of that then. So what happens? You arrive in beginning of October, and you actually start your research project at the beginning of January, so after Christmas.
Yes.
So you have that whole, as Yang said, during that first period, there'll be a lot of induction sessions. You'll be doing Yang Lan's module for the MRes computational subology. You'll be doing your well, first of all, your crash Python course, then Yang Lan's module. You'll be doing the other modules that you need to do to accrue your 180 total credits. But you'll also be listening to these talks where the project supervisor comes and presents the project to you. So what we do is we have an open call. So we say, this is the MRes, this is the sort of projects we're looking for, interdisciplinary, at the interface between physical science and biology. You need to have 2 supervisors, and then those people who are interested in having you as MRes students in the lab submit projects of that type. And then we screen them to make sure that they are appropriate for our MRes, that they meet the criteria for our MRes, and then they are presented to you. As Yang Lan said, if there are people you would like to go to that aren't represented on our list, that aren't on the talk schedule, what we do is then you tell me, I email them and ask them to submit a project. So if they're interested, then they will submit a project with 2 supervisors, just like everybody else, and they're added to the talk schedule so that everybody in your cohort will hear about a potential project in that lab. Obviously, if you've initiated it, then you're more likely to want to go to that one or that one. But so everybody gets the opportunity to hear the projects from everyone that's on offer. But it's not just restricted, as Yang Lan said, to the list that we give you. One other thing, just on the more social side of things. So we strongly encourage you to interact with our PhD students. So we treat you as identical to first year PhD students. Your spiritual home, and your administrative home, even if your lab project is not with us, is the Division of Laboratory of Molecular Cell Biology, the LMCB, which is where both Yang Lan and I are based. So that's your sort of like home base, if you like. That's where you will give seminars during your MRes and where you will attend our seminar series and other events. So what we do is we put you on the email list for all our PhD students. We have a very active PhD student community. They run outreach programs. For example, we have an annual school visit to the LMCB. They have meetings, student meetings, where they get together to discuss things that could be improved for students within the LMCB. They have skills exchange meetings. They organize our Christmas party. They organize our cocktail parties once a month. So there's they also have running clubs and bouldering clubs and lots of other social clubs. So you will be automatically put in that community by being added to their email list. And we strongly encourage you to participate in that as well. It's not all about the academic. We want you to enjoy your time at UCL and feel what it's really like to do a PhD, both from the work side, where you will have to work extremely hard in the lab, but also to feel the sort of the social aspects and the cohort feeling and the peer mentoring that you get as part of that community. So you should really feel, you should feel supported, not just by us, the sort of program leaders and tutors, but also by the other members of the MRes, but also by this larger PhD master's student community. Okay, so any questions? Is there anything that we haven't covered that people would like to cover? Oh, it's just somebody has just arrived and I was just about to wind up. Is there anything else you want to say, young man?
I think I've covered everything. Yeah,
I
unless there's
think
any
so.
questions.
So it's really just questions. If there's no other questions, then we'll wind up the session for today. There's another session at 4 o'clock today for those of you who arrived late or maybe missed stuff or would like to participate in another one. Maybe you think of questions after this meeting that you'd like to ask. So you can feel free to come back at 4, I think. And there are also these online sessions will be running throughout from now right the way through the recruiting process. So you're more than welcome to sign up for another session further on throughout that recruiting session if there's more information you'd like. You can also contact either Yanglan or I directly via email.
Yeah, so there was a student who just arrived, I think.
Yes.
Chen-Yu-Zhang, is there anything in particular you would like to ask us? So unfortunately, we've actually just finished the introduction and a lot of the description of the course. But if you want, if you have any, burning questions, you can ask. Hello, are you there?
Ian has just put a link in the chat, which is for the 4 p.m. session. So we'll run another half-hour session at 4 p.m.
Oh, okay. There's a question from Eva. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Yes, there's a session at 4 today, but also, what is the entry requirements for this program? Would it be a disadvantage to not have a computational background? So the entry requirements are
2-1.
2-1, but we are not saying you must have, a computational degree. No, really, it's not about that. As I said, it's really to teach computational skills to biologists, right? And so we would expect some basic coding, or for example, in Python, that's what we highly encourage. But as I said earlier, we have a crash course at the beginning to try to, give biologists who have little computational coding background like a crash course in Python, which is the introduction to Python and the basics. And most of the taught courses, at least the one I teach, is not expecting you to code from scratch. Often the lecturers will already have some code that you modify and run simulations. So you do need to have a bit of background, but not, you don't have to have a computer science degree. Okay. And so I wouldn't worry about not knowing anything now. But for example, in the summer, if you do decide to apply for the course and you get accepted on the course, I guess my point is we won't reject you because you don't have a computational background, but we will highly encourage you to do some online Python in your own time before you start, because that will just make the first few months much easier for you. But even if you don't, and we have students who didn't when they started, it was a steep learning curve, as Julie says, but they all did it and found it very rewarding. And actually, in a few months, they improved much more than anyone else did on the course. So it just, depends on how much of a challenge you want to give yourself in the first few months. But it will be a learning curve process, that's for sure. But we won't reject you because you don't have a computer, you know, advanced computing, whatever skills.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that really, so on the application, we are looking for students who are interested in doing interdisciplinary science of a computational nature. So of course, in your statement, your personal statement that you put on that application, we need to see that that is you, that you might just have a pure biology degree, but that you are really interested in using and learning computational skills. So if you're motivated, so it's all about motivation. If you're motivated in using computational skills, then hopefully you will do, for example, there are lots of free online Python courses that you could do over the summer. We will provide all the help that we can give you, including this crash course in Python before you start. But you're all adults, you're all sensible, you know what you're applying for, so you should prepare yourself for being able to, at least have a basic knowledge of computation and coding and Python, really. Just that's all that we're asking. A basic knowledge of Python before you start, because as Yang Lan said, it'll make your life a lot easier. And because that's what you're here to learn. So if that's your interest, then that's why you're coming to us, to learn these interdisciplinary skills. So give yourself a bit of a head start by doing what you can by yourself over the summer.
Okay. Yeah. And also, if you have at least some basic understanding, so I always use the analogy, if you know your ABCs, it makes it easier for us to teach you how to write a novel, right? And in a way, our aim is try to teach you how to apply the skills to problems, which actually is often not taught, as a computer scientist, for example. It's just, you know how to code, but how do you apply your skills to biology? How do you actually make a model? Like, what is the model you want to create? And then the coding is almost just, I mean, nowadays, to be fair, a lot of coding, there are lots of existing codes out there. You can reuse many codes, right? Very few people write code from 0 lines and write from scratch. But then there's, how do you apply that to meaningful questions? Identifying the right questions. What's the gap in knowledge? What do people need? Whether it's in healthcare, medicine, other aspects, biodiversity, ecology, global, whatever, that's what we want to teach you, how to apply your coding skills to a problem.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Any other questions? If not, Yang Lan, I think we're okay. We will finish the call here. Is that okay with you? I think we've covered just about everything.
Yeah, I think so. So again, any more questions? Last chance. But then also, of course, feel free to email us or join the other sessions that we have. There's another one this afternoon at 4 p.m. Oh,
Yes. That's it.
I was also wondering, would there be project? Oh, wondering if sorry.
Protein structure.
Yes, there will be actually. Yes, in fact, very much so, definitely, because that is something we are actually quite strong at, and of course, yes.
Anything from the molecular to the environmental. So yeah, across all those different scales. And if any project that involves computation, AI, machine learning, biological questions, they are within the remit of the MRes. And we would encourage you to be ambitious and do different things.
Yeah, exactly. So we actually have a very strong structural molecular biology department within our division, and they are hosting students to exactly do what you said, to really apply computational approaches to protein structure, and also how to make the most of, for example, AlphaFold, but it hasn't solved all problems yet, right? And so how can we build on that? And that's very much an active research area of our professors here at UCL.
Okay, thank you all of you for your questions. I hope
Thank
you
you.
found it helpful, and we look forward to seeing your applications in the near future, and then seeing you here at UCL, right, on the MRes.